Welcome back to Hammer Horror and Order. We're revisiting the Hammer House of Horror here this month. I'm Josh. I'm joined here with Donnie
Yo.
and the Professor Smoke.
What's up?
We are from the All American Spook Show podcast, where you can listen to the podcast every Monday at 6 p.m. East, right here on the YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcast. Of course, we've got tons of our archives right here. You can go over to aaspookshow.com. That's where you can find our entire podcast archives. And of course, we got lots of other cool stuff right here on the YouTube channel. So you want to stick around and watch some of that stuff. We've got this series. Like I said, this is the 9th one. So we've got 8 previous ones. We've got a ton of Grindhouse Gutter in that series where we talk about B movies and Grindhouse type flicks, drive-in flicks. We've got Video Vortex where we just recently did the abomination that was Cruel Jaws. That was the latest installment over there. We want you to go watch it, but I do not recommend you watch that movie. Just go watch our video on it and you'll see. And we also have Traumatic Experience where we go through the Trauma Films library over there. That was the one that we just recently started over the last couple months. So the next one that we'll be doing there will be Hollywood Zap, which I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. The first one that we did was the Toxic Avenger, and Donnie wasn't there for that, but hopefully
missed it, man.
Yeah. You're gonna hate that you missed it even more once we watch Hollywood Zap. I'm sure it's all downhill for the most part from the Toxic Avenger to just about everything else they did. So, yeah. But yeah,
we started with the doozy. We started where you should start really when you start. If you start with Trauma Show,
that's the shallow end of the pool for sure.
If you don't like Toxic Avenger, then you might as well not even watch any more Trauma films.
Yeah. You might as well tap out now. But yeah, we encourage you to go find all that stuff here on the YouTube channel and go over to aaspookshow.com. That's kind of the center of all this. You can find everything from there and everything that we do over on our Patreon and all that stuff. So thanks for watching. But yeah, the latest, basically the whole premise of Hammer Horror in Order is right there in the title. We're watching through the Hammer Horror Films library and the thrillers as well in the chronological order in which they were released. So now last month we watched The Hound of the Baskervilles, which came out in May of 1959. So we've worked our way up now to September of 1959, September 25th to be exact of 1959 with The Mummy. This one, it seems like every month, directed by Terence Fisher, screenplay by Jimmy Sangster. I mean, it's pretty much the same group of guys here, just about every damn month. And we're on let me see, we're 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th picture in a row that was directed by Terence Fisher. These are in chronological order. So he was a very busy man back in 1957 to 1959 here. And I don't know how much longer this will continue. And we'll get into what's coming up on the 10th episode next month here at the end of the episode. But yeah, like it seems like every month it's some combination of Terence Fisher and Jimmy Sangster or someone else writing it, like Peter Bryan, and Val Guest is kind of sprinkled in there too, or Nigel Neal, from some of that Quatermass type stuff that we've watched. But just about every one of these has been done by Terence Fisher and Jimmy Sangster. So, but hey,
we'll see a little bit of change, but it'll be like Jimmy Sangster directing and Terence Fisher maybe is writing.
yeah.
But or Anthony Hines is director. Yeah, I know we'll see some of that as we go along. I just forget. I know that Terence Fisher was my personal favorite Hammer director and probably the one that did. I don't know this for sure, but if I had to guess, I'd say he's probably the one that directed the most.
Varying degrees in all these of how well they are, but I think for the most part, we've enjoyed most everything that we've watched so far of these first 8 pictures that we've watched, right? So we'll dive into what we think about The Mummy here in just a second, as far as like our rating is concerned. Now, we came together beforehand. We kind of did a consensus of all 3 of us, and we'll give you that rating a little bit later on. But what did you think about this one, Smoke, as far as like that? They really lean in, especially like kind of stop in the middle of the movie to kind of really give you the background of all the Egyptian stuff.
Yeah, I like the structure of the story as far as it starting with the archaeologist in Egypt, well, not in Egypt, where we find out that she's this queen who is traveling from Egypt but had died while on her travels in a jungle. I forget exactly where the location was of this find or whatever, right? So you get them with the dig or whatever, and then you get a little bit of that story. Then, like you said, later they almost stop the movie in order to give you this backstory on the queen, the Egyptian queen, as well as what was his name, the Karis. So, and then you get the backstory between them two and how they're linked, and the whole lead up to her being buried and entombed in the jungle between Egypt and wherever it was they were traveling to. And then, of course, you get, as you would expect, the mummy coming back to life and enacting revenge, like you've seen in Universal or any number of monster movies involving the mummy. And we were talking about this a little bit offline. Me personally, I don't know how y'all feel, but the mummy has always been the weaker link to me for the monster movies, and that doesn't mean I don't like them. I love the Universal mummy movies, and I love the Hammer mummy films. It's just that I like the Dracula and the Wolfman and Frankenstein ones more, and I always have. But I still think still a great, excellent storyline. It's just for me not quite as on par with the other monster.
Yeah, he's like, to me, the Mummy was always kind of fourth level, right down there with the creature from the Black Lagoon and a couple others, Invisible Man.
Oh man,
he's down in that range. Well below Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman.
Yeah.
I'd say the writing and the storytelling in this movie was pretty sharp from Jimmy Sangster, as far as being very deliberate about the story structure here. Like, let's kind of start at this point, like you said a minute ago. Let's go back and tell the origins of the mummy, and now let's get back to the story, and everything just kind of clunk, clunk, clunk falls into place. Like all the way throughout the movie. We don't give out spoilers necessarily on this, but it does kind of have an abrupt ending, though, doesn't it? Like, whatever the event that happens there, and then it's just like they're all just kind of looking, and then the end. That was kind of
you knew it was coming. You knew it was there. They're getting close to it, but then I thought there might have been just a little bit like, oh no, boom, okay, the credits. Okay, that's
you're kind of like, was there a little bit of aftermath on what just happened? Nope, the end. All right, well, that's it. And of course,
like a little abrupt because of all the writing that he did and the way that he interlinked everything together at the beginning and the middle. Once you get to the end, it concludes in a certain way, but it is a little bit abrupt compared to how he wrote the rest of the movie.
This is about an hour and 28 minutes, and he uses every minute of this one, as far as like storytelling is concerned, and the pacing of it and everything. But I mean, there's a couple moments in this movie that it drug a little bit, but I think for the most part, it kept up a pretty good pace of, it kept you interested, right? There's probably not as much action for sure as you would like, because you really only see the mummy take down you only see a few people die, right? I think throughout the movie.
Yeah. Because there really wasn't, because the way that, not that we're giving away spoilers or anything here, but I mean, anybody who's seen any mummy movies knows, usually it's almost like a voodoo type movie, right? The mummy gets brought back, and then by somebody who's using it to enact revenge in some way, shape, or form, or whatever, right? So, so that's what's kind of going on here is the people who invaded the tomb, the archaeologists who were involved in the dig, are getting the revenge enacted on them. And there's not too many of them, so hence a lower body count. But as you mentioned too, as far as the storyline and stuff, like he could have wrote it sequentially, and it wouldn't have been as interesting if he had just given the backstory of the queen from the beginning, what happened to her and then Karis and all that stuff, and then go to the archaeologists. That just kind of struck me. I wanted to get back to that for a moment. Just the writing style of this really lifts it up a little bit more, because if he had written it straightforward, it wouldn't have been as entertaining. It would have been a little bit more tedious. The pacing wouldn't have been as good.
Even because basically there's two big flashback scenes in this movie, because then when they go back a little bit later on and show that little gap of time where his dad goes into the tomb, the mummy first makes his appearance, and then his dad just kind of becomes a gibbering mess. From seeing the mummy, like they go back and fill those holes, from that point. So I mean that, and I think the cinematography in this one is probably some of the best we've seen throughout the first, 9 or so movies that we've watched. The cinematographer on this was Jack Asher. And what about the makeup on the mummy himself, on Christopher Lee? That was done by Roy Ashton, I believe.
I think they did a great job of Jimmy Sangster, I guess, right? Writing it, of the thing falling off the carriage when it was being transported, the sarcophagus, and it was inside a box, falls into a swamp. And so then later when he rises, he's rising from the swamp, and so he's wet through the entire movie. He's like muddy and wet, whatever. So I think I thought that was a cool look, and it's different than what you're used to seeing. Usually used to seeing a dusty mummy,
Yeah.
because of the sands of Egypt and all that stuff. Usually just dry and dusty. This one's a wet mummy, wet and muddy and dirty or whatever.
Yeah, something like, and I mean, we've talked about it in previous episodes. Um, Christopher Lee really gets beat up in these Hammer movies,
Yeah.
and
Gets
this was
hammered.
no, yeah,
He gets
he gets
hammered.
hammered. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but no, so yeah, when he busts through the door, he actually dislocated his shoulder doing that. And when he was walking through the swamp, like there were pipes, that he couldn't see, and he was always banging into them.
Mm-hmm.
He just, yeah,
He took a beating.
yeah,
Not to mention just the makeup itself looks very uncomfortable. I mean, just he's everything's covered except his eye slits, and those eye slits are
yeah.
full. The thing's full of swampy, muddy water or whatever. So it had to be one of the most uncomfortable makeup jobs he's probably done at that point, I would imagine.
And so far, we've failed to mention Peter Cushing yet again.
Mm.
Another strong performance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's always great seeing them together. Even though, again, this is a movie where they interact, but they don't because he doesn't have, Christopher Lee doesn't have any actual lines, much like in Frankenstein, where he was limited, to
Yeah, at least not as the mummy.
rooms and things. And then together they didn't really. Yeah, I mean, they had some, of course, in the backstory, Christopher Lee had lines because he's, before he was mummified or whatever, when they're showing that flashback stuff. But, Peter Cushing's character is in the modern world. He's the architect.
Yeah. So they don't interact that way. Yeah. They have no back and forth dialogue.
Yeah. So once again, we get cheated at that aspect, but at least you do get to see them acting together if they're not necessarily exchanging dialogue together.
One of many that we've seen already, and one of 1,000 more that I'm sure we'll see throughout the journey through the catalog here. Yeah, I mean, I think overall though, it's a great movie. Now, so I did see that some people kind of conflate a little bit that like this is a remake of The Mummy, from what was it, 1932, Boris Karloff's Mummy, but it's less of a remake and more of kind of a retelling, and it actually takes some aspects of the plot and characters from two other Universal Mummy movies, The Mummy's Hand, which came out in 1940, and The Mummy's Tomb, which came out in 1942. And then apparently they pretty much just straight up lifted some of the climax moments from 1944's The Mummy's Ghost. So really, this is more of kind of a amalgamation in a way of those three movies, and then you get this new version of The Mummy here. So it's definitely not a remake of that original, Boris Karloff's The Mummy.
And it seems like too, once you get to Brendan Fraser's Mummy, there's a little bit of what do you call it? The influence or things they made up like cherry picked from this movie for that one.
I'm sure. I didn't read deep into like further versions and everything, and I'm sure there's whole documentaries and books on just all these different versions and comparing them. Yeah, but that wouldn't surprise me at all if they took elements from all these different versions and put them into that. But yeah, I mean, I think overall though, like if you like Hammer films type stuff, and let's face it, if you're watching this, you probably do. You'll love this one. I think we all pretty much agree. We came together beforehand, and we're giving it 3 3/4 hammers. That's out of 5. So it's not the highest marks we've given anything, but it's pretty high marks on our scale, I believe. And it's definitely something that I would watch again. And this is the first time I've watched it. I thought at some point I had watched this, but like as I was getting into it, no, I mean, if I did, it must have been 30 years ago. I forgot about it, but no, this is the first time I watched it.
I'm actually relatively new to most of these, most of these Hammer movies. The only one I've actually seen previously was Curse of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I'm pretty well versed on the monster movies from Hammer as far as the Draculas and the Frankensteins, and probably seen most of those. But the Mummy ones, I forget how many they've made. I've only seen this one as far as the Mummy films they've made. And there's a bunch of other ones we'll get to that aren't their bread and butter monster movies. That plenty of those I haven't seen as well. So definitely looking forward to getting to those. And in fact, the next one that we do on the show, I haven't seen. We'll be announcing that for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that Hammer did make some other Mummy movies, but I don't have like the list of like the lineage and how connected all these things are further down the line. So I'm sure we will get to those. You know, I know that there's more. So
yeah,
on next month when we return to the Hammer Horror and Order series, we're going to be watching. We're staying in the year 1959, so we're only going from September to the end of November of 1959, and we're going to be watching The Man Who Could Cheat Death. Now, this is one I definitely have not seen. This one, there's no question about that.
No, same.
The IMDb synopsis for it is: a centenarian artist and scientist in 1890 Paris maintains his youth and health by periodically replacing a gland with that of a living person. So this definitely sounds like it's got more sci-fi in it than the last couple that we've been watching here in the series. So for Will, who couldn't be with us, Donnie, Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are from the All American Spook Show podcast, which you can get every Monday at 6 p.m. East, wherever you get your podcast. And we encourage you to hang out here on the YouTube channel for all the other cool series that we have, and come back next month for the next Hammer Horror in Order.